Since I've been a kid, I've heard the truth sets you free, the truth sets you free. And I never understood, but I'm Heather Mack, and I want to be set free. So I came to Bali, and I told Tommy that he was going to come here for a vacation. I trapped him here. And that is what I regret. I don't regret killing my mother. I killed her myself. And I'm sorry, Tommy Schaefer. I'm sorry. I love you.
It's not the verdict today, is it?
Yeah, but what sentence are you?
Okay.
Less. I'm innocent.
In this episode of Monsters Among Us, we explore the tragic tale of Sheila von Wiese-Mack, a 62-year-old woman whose life was tragically ended by someone she knew, loved, and trusted. Born on June 10, 1952, Sheila Ann von Wiese entered the world with promise and potential. Fate would lead her to cross paths with the renowned jazz musician and composer James L. Mack, whom she would eventually marry. Together, they welcomed a daughter named Lois Heather Mack into their lives in October of 1995. Residing in the affluent suburbs of Chicago, the Macks enjoyed a life of comfort and privilege. Their family adventures often took them on extravagant vacations, including a memorable Royal Caribbean Mediterranean cruise in 2001. However, tragedy struck during this voyage when James Mack suffered a debilitating foot injury. Shockingly, the ship's medical staff failed to provide adequate treatment, leading to partial paralysis for James. Faced with the daunting reality of his condition, James initiated legal action against Royal Caribbean, citing negligence that resulted in his paralysis. The lawsuit highlighted his struggles, including the inability to independently access basic amenities, such as the restroom, forcing him to resort to using a bottle for relief. Yet justice would prove elusive, with years passing before resolution would be achieved in this ongoing legal battle. Roughly 3 years later, in 2004, the police were called to the Mack residence. James's children from a previous relationship claimed they were denied access to their father by Sheila, who would typically choose to turn off the lights and pretend no one was home whenever the children would arrive. However, nothing would come of the police visit to the house. By 2006, the Mack family was still vacationing, this time going to Greece. While in Greece on August 6th, James Mack died from a pulmonary embolism. Despite his death, his 2001 lawsuit continued proceeding, which was eventually settled in 2011. After deducting legal fees, Sheila Mack received $340,000 along with $500,000 for the estate of James Mack. Despite a will dated 5 days before James L. Mack died, in which his entire estate would go to Heather Mack, the $500,000 was awarded to Sheila Mack by a judge in Cook County, Illinois. One would think that this money would bring some sort of joy to Sheila and Heather after losing their husband and father, but instead, it only added fuel to a fire that was already being ignited. You see, as Heather got older, she became more rebellious. In fact, the police were called to the Mack home on 86 occasions on a series of theft and domestic violence reports cases between January 2004 and June 2013. Each incident involved both mother and daughter. At one point in January 2010, Heather punched her mother's broken ankle. She was even accused of stealing $1,000 from her mother. A year later, in February 2011, Heather broke her mother's arm and then removed the phone cord to keep her mother from seeking help from anyone. That July, Heather threatened her mother again, with her behavior only progressively getting worse. It got so bad that by November 2012, Heather bit her mother, leaving a bruise. When she wasn't fighting with her mother at home, Heather attended Oak Park and River Forest High School from 2010 to 2014. During her senior year of high school, she met and began dating a guy named Tommy Schaefer, commonly referred to as Tommy EXX by locals. Tommy was unemployed and had dreams of becoming a famous rapper, but this was something that Sheila didn't approve of at all. Heather's mother was so adamant about keeping Heather from Tommy that she decided to sell their house and move Heather and herself to the Gold Coast neighborhood of Chicago. Despite moving further away from Tommy, Heather still continued to see Tommy and became pregnant by him. Heather claims to have had 2 abortions at her mother's request. Because of everything going on between them, Sheila thought it might be a good idea to book a family vacation similar to the ones Sheila, Heather, and James would go on together. On August 4th, 2014, Heather and Sheila boarded a plane to Bali, Indonesia, where the mom and daughter duo planned to spend 10 days at a luxury resort, the St. Regis, where they could relax, unwind, and genuinely enjoy each other's company, or so Sheila thought. A week after the mother and daughter's arrival in Bali, a taxi driver noticed a young couple signaling for a ride. They informed him they were checking out and placed a suitcase in the trunk. Assured they would return shortly, the driver agreed to wait. However, after waiting for over 30 minutes, he decided to take action. Exiting the vehicle, he retrieved the suitcase from the trunk, and upon inspection, he observed something suspicious, what appeared to be bloodstains. Acting prudently, he promptly contacted the local police. Upon their arrival, the officers opened the suitcase to discover the body of an adult woman inside, indicating she had been brutally beaten to death. Providing the authorities with details about the couple who had entrusted him with the suitcase, the driver assisted in initiating an investigation. This led the authorities to scrutinize guests staying at the resort, aiming to identify potential suspects in the tragic assault and murder of the woman. The police eventually realized their victim was Sheila, a 62-year-old woman who had booked a 10-day stay at the resort. They also discovered she wasn't staying alone, but had booked the trip for herself and her daughter, Heather. Concerned that Heather could be in danger too, the authorities knocked at the hotel room but got no answer. They would then enter the room, discovering that it was in complete disarray. There was blood splattered throughout the hotel room, pieces of shattered glass all over the floors, and even a smashed fruit bowl. Now, authorities are aware that Sheila was probably murdered, but the question remains, by whom? And what about her daughter? An autopsy swiftly revealed that Sheila's cause of death was a broken neck and nose, alongside notable blunt force trauma. Police commenced interrogating everyone present on the premises. A crucial lead emerged when a desk clerk recalled Sheila's presence earlier that morning. According to the clerk, Sheila had descended from her room a few hours prior to report Heather's disappearance. However, as they prepared to notify the authorities, Heather herself entered the resort hand in hand with her boyfriend, Tommy. Naturally, seeing Heather and Tommy holding hands deeply disturbed Sheila, especially since she had opposed their relationship from the start, and particularly so while she was attempting to enjoy exclusive mother-daughter time in Bali. Recollecting the incident, the desk clerk remembered witnessing a heated confrontation between Heather and Sheila in the resort's lobby. During the exchange, Heather revealed to Sheila that Tommy's unexpected appearance in Bali was a surprise, driven by their week-long separation and his longing for her. Aware of Tommy's financial struggles, Sheila accused Heather of pilfering her credit card to fund Tommy's flight to Bali and his accommodation. The mere cost of the plane ticket amounted to several $1,000s. Following the altercation in the lobby, Tommy retreated to his room, while Sheila and Heather returned to theirs. However, this didn't signify a resolution. Rather, tensions remained high. Surveillance footage from the resort depicted Tommy entering Heather and Sheila's room, followed by the young couple shuttling back and forth between the rooms. Later that day, Tommy and Heather descended from their resort room, carrying a suitcase. They hailed a taxi and stowed the suitcase in the trunk before departing. Initially, authorities feared they might attempt to flee Indonesia. However, the discovery of Heather's passport in the hotel room assured authorities she couldn't leave the country, even if she attempted to. News of the incident quickly spread throughout Indonesia, prompting locals to be on high alert for Heather and Tommy. Shortly after sharing details with the media, police located the couple at a nearby motel. On August 13, 2014, authorities apprehended the pair and brought them in for questioning. During interrogations, Heather and Tommy made up a story in which they claimed someone kidnapped them and Sheila. They stated that the kidnappers were a street gang and that they managed to escape, but were currently hiding out from the gang and not the police. Of course, local authorities knew this wasn't the case. When presented with surveillance footage, the couple began to change their stories. Heather claimed that Tommy didn't come to Bali to cause harm to her mother. Instead, she said he was there so they could share the great news with Sheila. They were expecting a bundle of joy. But unfortunately, Sheila wasn't excited about the news. According to Heather and Tommy, she began choking Tommy for impregnating her daughter, so he says he grabbed a fruit bowl and used it in self-defense to get her off of him. But that was only one of many stories that the two would make up in an attempt to get away with the murder of Sheila von Wiese-Mack. And because the murder occurred in a foreign country and involved American citizens, the FBI got involved, which is when they learned that Heather Mack had millions of dollars in her bank account that she currently couldn't access due to her mother's control over it. Heather would have to wait until she was 21 years old to touch the money, but she was only 19 at the time of the murder. The FBI also discovered text messages between Heather and Tommy in which they discuss murdering Sheila. Rather than waiting 2 more years to access her money, Heather decided to do the unthinkable: plan out the murder of her mother, Sheila. She flew Tommy out because she wanted him to take her mother out, believing it was the only way to access her money and be with the man she loved. On August 15, 2014, Heather and Tommy were both designated as prisoners in Indonesia. On August 20th, a urine test confirmed that Heather was pregnant. 1 month later, on September 19th, Tommy Schaefer admitted to killing Sheila, while Heather admitted to helping him stuff her mother's body into the suitcase. Both were charged with premeditated murder on January 14, 2015, for which the punishment could have been death by firing squad.
So, this is a video that I need to make. A lot of the times, since I've been a kid, I've heard the truth sets you free, the truth sets you free. And I never understood, but I'm Heather Mack, and I want to be set free. I don't want to live in a lie anymore. When I was 10, my mother killed my father in a hotel in Athens, Greece. 2 weeks before I came to Bali, I found out that she killed my father. And I made it up in my heart, in my mind, my soul, in my blood, in the oxygen running through my body, that I wanted to kill my mother. First, I asked Tommy Schaefer to help me find somebody to kill my mom for $50,000. And he said no. After that, I got this whole new savage idea in my head that I wanted to kill her in a hotel room because she had killed my father in a hotel room. We were going to Bali, so I began to plot. I began turning off Tommy's phone, taking Tommy's phone when he was asleep, starting in Chicago, taking Tommy's phone and having conversations between Tommy and myself, texting myself, having fake conversations, and then deleting them before he could see them. I didn't want to get arrested by myself in a different country. So I came to Bali, and I told Tommy that he was going to come here for a vacation. I trapped him here. And that is what I regret. I don't regret killing my mother. I killed her myself. And I'm sorry, Tommy Schaefer. I'm sorry. I love you. I really love you, and if I could go back, I would do it myself. And I'm sorry that everyone who ever knew you now thinks you're a murderer when you're not. I'm sorry you won't be able to get a job. I'm sorry everybody thinks that you're some crazy killer. This is the truth.
Tommy continued to claim that he only killed Sheila von Wiese-Mack because she had threatened to kill their unborn baby and choked him for half a minute. Despite their attempt at a defense, Heather Mack was sentenced to 10 years in prison in Indonesia, and Tommy Schaefer to 18 years in April 2015. The judges were more lenient with Heather because she had recently given birth before her sentencing. In an interesting turn of events on September 23, 2015, Tommy's cousin, Robert Bibbs, was arrested in Chicago on federal charges of conspiracy for providing Tommy and Heather with tips and advice on how to kill Sheila. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison on June 2, 2017, on one count of conspiracy to commit foreign murder. The plea deal stated that Robert was fully aware that Heather had offered Tommy $50,000 to kill her mother, and that Bibbs advised him on how to get the job done. Heather Mack would spend the next several years behind bars, some of which she was given the opportunity to raise her daughter. In Indonesia, they allow babies to stay in jail cells with their mothers until they reach a certain age. In August of 2021, Heather was freed from prison and hoped to stay in Indonesia with her daughter, claiming it was a safer place to live than Chicago. However, Indonesian immigration indicated that both would be immediately deported because Heather's daughter was born American under Indonesia's jus sanguinis nationality law. In reality, Heather wanted to stay in Indonesia to avoid the consequences she was facing back home in the United States. But unfortunately for her, those consequences were unavoidable. Upon arriving in the United States, Heather Mack was arrested on conspiracy and obstruction charges. Her federal trial was scheduled for July 2023, but in June, Heather pleaded guilty to one count of conspiring to kill a U.S. national. She faced 28 years in prison and was sentenced to 26 years in prison. Because she will spend the next few decades in prison, Heather's daughter will remain in the custody of her cousin.
It's not the verdict today, is it?
Yeah, but what sentence say you request?
Okay.
Less. I'm innocent.